Millbrook stretched along the Hudson River like an industrial giant, its factory chimneys sticking up into the sky like metal fingers. This city never slept. Trucks roared along the highways, factory whistles signaled the end of shifts, and office buildings in the business center glowed late into the night. Here, you could get lost among a million residents, become invisible in the crowd. This is what attracted people from all over the country in search of work and a new life. In the eastern part of Millbrook, where the industrial zone gave way to residential neighborhoods, was the office of Miller Sons Construction. The 3-story brick building stood out among the warehouses and workshops for its neatness. Fresh paint, well-kept grounds, new windows. The parking lot was filled with workers' pickup trucks and several expensive SUVs. Aaron Miller climbed the stairs to the second floor where his father's office was located. In his hands, he held a folder with plans for a new residential complex, a project that could bring the company millions of dollars. At 27, Aaron had already established himself as a talented carpenter and promising manager. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the calloused hands of a craftsman, he had inherited not only his father's business acumen, but also his quick temper. "The morning plans are ready," Aaron said as he entered the spacious office. "The Hernandez crew will finish the finishing work by Friday, and the Johnson team will start on the foundation of the new facility." Baxter Miller sat at a massive oak table, studying financial reports. At 52, he looked younger than his age. His fit physique and graying temples gave him an air of authority, and his piercing gray eyes closely monitored every detail of the business. The company he had founded 20 years ago was now one of the largest construction firms in Millbrook. "Good. How are things going with the permits for Maple Street?" Baxter looked up at his son. "I need an answer by the end of the week." "I'm working on it, by the way, about Saturday." Aaron sat down on the edge of his chair. "Sophia would like you to give a speech at the rehearsal dinner." As the father of the groom, something flashed in Baxter's eyes, but his expression remained unchanged. "Of course." "It would be an honor." He put the documents aside. "How is she feeling?" "Not too nervous." "Sophia is fine." "A little excited, but that's normal." Aaron smiled. "We're both looking forward to the day." At that moment, the door opened and Martha Miller entered the office. The 49-year-old woman looked tired, despite her neat hairstyle and professional suit. She worked as an administrator at a large medical center on the other side of town and only visited her husband for important matters. "Sorry to interrupt," Martha said, but her voice was tense. "Baxter, we need to discuss the final details of the wedding." The florist called about changes to the arrangements. "Could you handle that yourselves?" Baxter didn't even look up from his papers. "I have a meeting in an hour." Martha pressed her lips together. Aaron noticed the muscles in her face twitch. "It's your son getting married, Baxter." "I think you could show a little more interest." "I am showing interest." Baxter's voice grew colder. "I'm paying half the expenses. Isn't that enough?" Aaron felt the familiar tension that always arose between his parents. In recent months, these skirmishes had become more frequent and more intense. "Mom, I can talk to the florist," he interjected. "Sophia is already worried about the little things." Martha nodded, but her gaze remained stern. "Fine. But the dinner rehearsal is on Friday night, and I expect us all to be there together. As a family." When Martha left, an awkward silence hung in the office. Baxter returned to his papers, but Aaron could see that his father was irritated. "Dad, are you okay?" Aaron asked cautiously. "Everything's fine." Baxter looked up and smiled stiffly. "Just a lot of work. You know how it is before important projects." Aaron nodded, but something about his father's behavior alarmed him. Baxter had always been focused on business, but lately he seemed particularly distant, even when it came to his only son's upcoming wedding. On the other side of town, at the large Fresh Mart supermarket, Sophia Clark stood at checkout lane number 7, mechanically scanning items. The 24-year-old girl looked fragile and graceful, with delicate features and long brown hair that she wore in a neat ponytail at work. But if you looked closely, you could see dark circles under her eyes and a slight tremor in her hands. "Sophia, how are you?" asked her colleague Linda, passing by with a return card. "You look pale." "Just tired," Sophia replied, trying to smile. "The wedding is in a week, lots to do." "I understand. But then you'll be Mrs. Miller." Linda winked. "You're lucky to have a guy like that." Sophia nodded, but the smile instantly disappeared from her face as soon as Linda walked away. The last few weeks had turned into a real nightmare for her. Every morning she woke up hoping that everything that was happening was just a bad dream, but reality turned out to be cruel. The phone in her pocket vibrated. Sophia discreetly took it out and read the message. Her face paled even more. "We need to talk. Tonight. Usual place." Sophia quickly deleted the message and hid her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly that she almost dropped the barcode scanner. "I'm sorry, it looks like the system is frozen," she said to the customer, an elderly man with a cart full of groceries. "Just a minute." But the problem wasn't the system. The problem was that Sophia could no longer run away from the truth that was about to destroy not only her life, but also the life of the person she truly loved. In the evening, Aaron came to see Sophia at her small apartment in the Central District. She rented a one-room apartment on the third floor of an old building, a modest but cozy place overlooking a busy street. "How's work?" he asked, kissing her on the cheek. "Fine. How about you? How's Dad?" Sophia tried not to look him in the eye. "He's acting strange. Mom, too. It seems like they're avoiding talking to each other altogether." Aaron took off his jacket and sat down on the sofa. "I hope they don't make a scene at the wedding." Sophia stood frozen by the window, looking at the city lights. "Aaron, what if something goes wrong?" "What do you mean?" He walked over to her and hugged her from behind. "Everything will be perfect. We've been planning this for months. I'm not talking about the planning. I'm talking about us." Sophia turned to face him. "Are you sure we're ready for this? For marriage? For living together?" Aaron frowned. "Of course I'm ready." "Sophia, we've talked about this 100 times. I love you. I want to spend my whole life with you, have children." At the word children, Sophia flinched. "What's wrong?" Aaron took her hands. "You've been acting strange these last few weeks." "I'm just nervous," she whispered. "Everything is going to change so quickly." "For the better," Aaron said confidently. "We'll be happy, Sophia. I promise." But Sophia knew that some promises were impossible to keep, especially when the truth was ready to destroy everything you believed in. The Riverside Health Medical Center occupied an entire block in the business district of Millbrook. Among the endless corridors filled with the smell of disinfectant and the quiet hum of medical equipment, Sophia felt particularly small and lost. She had been sitting in the gynecologist's waiting room for half an hour, clutching her test referral in her hands. 2 weeks ago, she had started experiencing symptoms that she initially attributed to pre-wedding stress, morning sickness, fatigue, and a delayed period. But when the home test showed 2 lines, Sophia's world fell apart. "Sophia Clark?" called the nurse. In the office of Dr. Elizabeth Chen, an experienced gynecologist of Asian descent, Sophia sat down in a chair across from the desk. The test results lay in an open folder. "Congratulations, Miss Clark. You're pregnant. You're about 10 to 11 weeks along," Dr. Chen said with a professional smile. "All indicators are normal. When do you plan to tell the child's father?" Sophia froze. 10 to 11 weeks. That meant conception had occurred in late January or early February. That's when... "Miss Clark, are you all right?" Dr. Chen leaned forward with concern. "Yes, sorry. It's just unexpected," Sophia whispered. "My fiancé and I were planning to have children, but after the wedding, it happens." The main thing is that the baby is healthy. You need to start taking prenatal vitamins and make an appointment for your next visit in a month." Sophia nodded, but the doctor's words sounded like they were coming through cotton wool. 10 weeks ago. February. She remembered that evening clearly. February, 3 months ago. After the Miller Sons company party, Sophia stayed behind to help clean up the office. Aaron had gone home early. He had an important meeting with clients the next day and wanted to get some sleep. Only Sophia and Baxter remained in the building. "Thanks for helping," Baxter said, closing the last boxes of documents. "Aaron is lucky to have you." Sophia smiled. That evening, Baxter was particularly charming, telling stories from his youth, joking, asking her opinion about the business. She had always been a little shy around her future father-in-law, but the alcohol at the party had loosened her up. "I like your family, Mr. Miller. Aaron is very proud of you. Call me Baxter. We'll be related soon." He moved closer, and Sophia caught the scent of his expensive cologne. "You know, you're a very beautiful girl, Sophia." What happened next seemed unreal even now. Maybe it was a combination of alcohol, loneliness, and the attention of an older man. Maybe she was seeking confirmation of her attractiveness before the wedding. Or maybe Baxter just happened to be in the right place at the right time when her defenses were down. It happened right there in the office. Quickly, almost desperately. Sophia remembered the cool surface of the desk beneath her back, Baxter's heavy breathing, and her own feeling of falling into an abyss. In the morning, she woke up at home with a feeling of nausea that had nothing to do with a hangover. Baxter sent a short message. "Nothing happened yesterday." I think you understand. Sophia understood, and she kept quiet for 3 months. Now, as she left the medical center, Sophia felt reality crashing down on her with full force. The baby could be Aaron's. They had been close during that period, but it could also be Baxter's. And no one was ever supposed to find out. Her phone vibrated. "Baxter. Where are you? We need to meet. Now." Sophia deleted the message and hailed a taxi. Their usual meeting place was in the old warehouse district, where Baxter sometimes inspected building materials. Abandoned warehouse number 47, a place where no one would see them. Baxter was already waiting, leaning against a black SUV. In the daylight, he looked older, more tired. The lines around his eyes were deeper, and the gray in his hair more noticeable. "You've been avoiding my calls," he said instead of greeting her. "I have nothing to say to you," Sophia replied, keeping her distance. "That's not true. I can see how you look at me. I can feel your tension." Baxter took a step forward. "What's going on, Sophia?" "Nothing. I'm just nervous about the wedding." "Don't lie to me." Baxter's voice hardened. "We know each other well. Too well." Sophia turned away, looking at the rusty containers and piles of scrap metal. "What happened between us was a mistake. A huge mistake. And it will never happen again. Sophia!" Baxter came up behind her, almost touching her shoulder. "I can't forget that night. And neither can you. I'm marrying your son." She turned sharply, tears glistening in her eyes. "The man I love." "You love him?" Baxter smirked. "Then why were you with me? Why didn't you resist?" Sophia slapped him across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the empty warehouse. "Because I was drunk and stupid. Because you took advantage of the situation." She trembled with rage and despair. "I'll never forgive myself for this." Baxter rubbed his cheek, but didn't back down. "We're both adults, Sophia. We both knew what we were doing." "No! You knew. You planned it," Sophia sobbed. "I saw how you looked at me for months before that." Waiting for the right moment, they stood in silence for a while. Then Baxter sighed. "Okay, let's say it was a mistake. But now we're bound together forever. You're going to be my sister-in-law. We'll see each other at all the family celebrations, our grandchildren's birthdays." "Grandchildren?" Sophia paled. "Of course. Aaron wants a big family. Baxter looked at her intently. And you? Do you want children, Sophia? She didn't answer, but Baxter saw the truth in her eyes. Oh my God, he whispered. You're pregnant. Sophia backed away, but it was too late. Is it my child? Baxter asked quietly. No! It's Aaron's child. Sophia, don't lie. I remember the dates. Baxter moved closer. It happened at the end of February. How many weeks? Sophia was silent, but her face said it all. 10? 11? Baxter nodded to himself. Yes, it's my baby. You don't know that for sure, Sophia whispered. But there's a possibility. A strong possibility. Baxter took her hand. Sophia, we have to think about this. About what? She pulled her hand away. About ruining Aaron's life? Telling him that his fiancée slept with his father and may be pregnant with his child? We can leave. Start a new life in another city. You're crazy. Sophia backed away even further. You have a wife, a family, business, and I have Aaron, who loves me and whom I love. Even if the child is mine? Sophia froze. That question had tormented her day and night since she found out she was pregnant. Even if, she finally said, Aaron will be a wonderful father, and you'll be a grandfather, and no one will ever know the truth. Baxter looked at her long and intently. And you think you can live with that? Looking at the child every day and wondering who his real father is? Looking at me at the family table, knowing our secret? I can, Sophia said firmly, because the alternative is worse. When Sophia left, Baxter remained in the empty warehouse. He took out his phone and stared at the screen for a few minutes. Then he dialed the number of a private investigator he sometimes worked with on corporate matters. Rick? It's Baxter Miller. I need a small favor. Meanwhile, at the Miller son's office, Martha Miller sat in the reception area waiting for her husband. She had come to discuss the details of the dinner rehearsal, but the secretary said that Baxter had left on urgent business and would not be back until the end of the day. Martha decided to wait in his office. In 20 years of marriage, she had rarely been here. Baxter had always kept his work and family strictly separate. But today, something compelled her to stay. The office was neat and functional, diplomas on the walls, photos of construction projects, a few family photos on the desk. Martha walked over to the window, which overlooked an industrial area. She happened to notice an open desk drawer. Baxter usually locked all his documents carefully, but today, he had forgotten in his haste. Martha had no intention of rummaging through her husband's papers, but one document caught her attention. A receipt from the Diamond Dreams jewelry store for a gold bracelet with emeralds. The cost was $5,000. The date of purchase was 2 weeks ago. Martha frowned. She hadn't received any gifts from her husband in recent months. Their relationship had become cold and formal. Who was this bracelet for? She quickly photographed the receipt and put it back. Suspicions began to form in her mind. Suspicions she had been trying to ignore for months. Late nights, secret phone calls, Baxter's general aloofness. Martha knew the signs of infidelity. She had seen enough divorcing couples in her work at the medical center. But who was this woman? Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Aaron entered with a folder of documents. Mom? What are you doing here? Waiting for Dad. We need to discuss the dinner rehearsal. Martha quickly moved away from the table. Where is he? He said he went to check on a property. Aaron sat down in the visitor's chair. Mom, are you okay? You look upset. Martha hesitated. Should she share her suspicions with her son a week before his wedding? Just tired. Lots to do before the wedding, I know. Sophia's nervous too. By the way, she went to the doctor today. A routine checkup before the wedding. Aaron smiled. She wants to make sure everything's okay. Something in those words made Martha look more closely at her son. The doctor? Which one? A gynecologist, I think. Women's stuff, you know. Aaron shrugged. She didn't go into details. Martha nodded, but a strange thought flashed through her mind. A routine checkup or something else? And why had Sophia never mentioned any health problems? That evening, Sophia sat in her apartment looking at the test results. The pregnancy was a fact. The baby was developing normally, and in a week, she was supposed to marry Aaron, hiding a secret that could destroy his life. The phone rang. Aaron. Hi, beautiful. How are you? How did the doctor's appointment go? Sophia clutched the phone. Everything's fine. The doctor said I'm healthy. Great. Listen, my mom wants to meet with you tomorrow to discuss the final details of the rehearsal. Is that okay with you? Of course it's fine. Sophia, I love you. You know that, right? Tears ran down her cheeks. I know. I love you too, Aaron. Then why are you crying? I can hear it in your voice. I'm just happy. Very happy that I'll soon be your wife. When the conversation ended, Sophia lay down on the sofa and closed her eyes. One more week, 7 days until the wedding. 7 days to decide if she could live her whole life with this secret. Somewhere else in the city, Baxter Miller sat in his office studying the photos sent by the private investigator. Sophia enters the medical center. Sophia leaves with papers in her hands. Sophia cries in a taxi. Now he knew for sure. And he had to decide what to do with this information. Friday. 1 day left until the wedding. The Heritage Restaurant in downtown Millbrook was booked for the wedding rehearsal dinner. The elegant establishment with high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and panoramic windows overlooking the city park could accommodate 50 guests. It was here that the Miller family and Sophia's relatives were to gather at 7 in the evening for final preparations for tomorrow's celebration. Sophia stood in front of the mirror in her apartment, trying to fasten the blue dress she had bought especially for this evening. The fabric stretched tighter around her waist than it had a month ago when she tried it on. Another sign of the changes taking place in her body. She had hardly slept in the last 3 days. Every time she closed her eyes, Sophia saw Aaron's face, trusting, loving, full of hope for their future together. And then she imagined how that face would change when he learned the truth. When Aaron came to pick her up, Sophia made a decision. Standing in the hallway of her apartment, she gathered all her determination and told him about the pregnancy. But only about the pregnancy. Aaron's reaction was exactly what she had expected and feared at the same time. His face lit up with happiness. He picked her up in his arms, spun her around the hallway, and bombarded her with questions about the due date and the sex of the baby. There was such sincere joy in his delight that Sophia felt her heart breaking into pieces. Aaron wanted to tell their parents the news immediately at the dinner rehearsal, but Sophia convinced him to wait until after their honeymoon. She cited her desire to first become officially husband and wife, but the real reason was different. She needed time to decide what to do with her big secret. At the Miller Sons office, Baxter was finishing a conversation with private investigator Rick Thompson. The information confirmed his suspicions. Sophia had indeed been to the gynecologist, bought vitamins for pregnant women, and searched the internet for information about paternity tests. This gave him certain advantages in the upcoming game. He took a box from the jeweler out of his desk drawer. The gold bracelet with emeralds was meant to show Sophia the seriousness of his intentions. Baxter understood that he was playing a dangerous game, but his habit of getting what he wanted at any cost was stronger than his reason. Meanwhile, Martha Miller was conducting her own investigation. Yesterday's visit to the Diamond Dreams jewelry store had yielded disappointing results. The saleswoman willingly recounted the purchase. An elegant gentleman had bought the bracelet for a special lady and asked for the initials SC to be engraved on the inside. Sophia Clark. 22 years of marriage were crumbling before Martha's eyes. She sat in her car outside the jewelry store and cried, realizing that her suspicions had been confirmed in the most painful way. Her husband had been cheating on her with the girl who was supposed to become his sister-in-law tomorrow. As she got ready for the rehearsal dinner, Martha chose a black dress. The color matched her mood. In the mirror, she saw a woman who had aged several years in the last few days. She had a decision to make: confront him on the eve of the wedding, or remain silent until the celebration was over. The Heritage restaurant was filled with guests by 7 in the evening. Relatives from both sides, friends of Aaron and Sophia, colleagues from the construction company. About 40 people gathered at a long table in a private room. Outwardly, everything looked perfect. A happy couple, proud parents, joyful guests. But beneath the surface of well-being, there were undercurrents of tension. Baxter gave a speech about the newlyweds, and Sophia heard a double meaning in his words that only the two of them understood. When he spoke about her uniqueness and the light she brought to their family, his gaze was too long and meaningful. Aaron beamed with happiness as he accepted congratulations and gifts. He kept looking at Sophia with adoration, and each glance caused her physical pain. The secret of her pregnancy, which she had revealed to him, only intensified his delight and made the impending revelation even more cruel. Martha watched Sophia all evening. The girl was pale, nervous, constantly apologizing and leaving the room. The behavior of someone who is hiding something important. Around 10 o'clock in the evening, Martha couldn't take it anymore and followed Sophia to the ladies' room. The confrontation took place in front of the mirror in the empty ladies' room. Martha was straightforward and ruthless. She knew about the bracelet, the secret meetings, the secrets that could destroy families. Sophia tried to deny it, but the evidence was too convincing. Sophia's admission that it had only happened once and was a mistake did not soften Martha. On the contrary, the thought that her marriage was ruined for one night with a girl who was old enough to be Baxter's daughter intensified her anger and disgust. Martha gave Sophia an ultimatum. Either she tell Aaron the truth before the wedding, or Martha would. The choice was cruel but fair. Aaron deserved to know the truth about the woman he was about to marry. When Martha left, Sophia remained alone in front of the mirror. Her reflection showed a pale face, red eyes, and trembling hands. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but now it could be the day of complete ruin. In the hall, dinner was coming to an end. The guests were leaving, wishing the newlyweds good luck. Aaron looked for Sophia and didn't notice the icy stare his mother was giving his father. Baxter sensed the tension and understood that something had changed dramatically. When Sophia returned from the ladies' room, Baxter tried to talk to her, but she refused categorically. She told him of her decision to tell Aaron the truth, and for the first time in many years, Baxter felt real fear. Not only was his position in the family crumbling, but so was his reputation, his business, his whole life. Late in the evening, the Miller family returned home in painful silence. Aaron left to drive Sophia home, happily planning their future with their child, while Baxter and Martha were left alone for the first time all day. The conversation between the spouses was short and painful. Martha asked directly about his relationship with Sophia, and Baxter's silence spoke louder than any confession. 22 years of marriage destroyed for one night with a girl who was old enough to be his daughter. Martha was adamant. She would not allow Aaron to marry a woman who had slept with his father. If Sophia couldn't find the strength to tell the truth, she would. Baxter tried to appeal to her emotions, saying that the truth would destroy Aaron. But Martha saw the situation differently. Their family was already destroyed, and their son had a right to know. That night in Millbrook, few people slept peacefully. Sophia lay in bed, mentally rehearsing the most difficult conversation of her life. She knew she had to tell Aaron not only about her pregnancy, but also about her relationship with his father, about the possibility that the child might not be his. Martha Miller sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. She was trying to decide what was the right thing to do, protect her son from pain or let him live in ignorance. Her maternal instinct told her one thing, her sense of justice another. Baxter was in his home office, realizing that tomorrow could be the end of everything he had built over the years. His company, his reputation, his family, everything was hanging by a thread. For the first time in his life, he found himself in a situation that he could not control with money or influence. Aaron slept like a man who was about to become the happiest person in the world tomorrow. He dreamed of the wedding, the honeymoon, the future child, and a long and happy life with the woman he loved. He did not yet know that his world was about to collapse on the most important day of his life. Meanwhile, in the city, the final preparations for the celebration were underway. Florists were arranging flowers in the church, the catering company was preparing the banquet hall, and musicians were tuning their instruments. Everything was ready for the celebration of love, which was about to turn into a tragedy of betrayal. The dawn of Saturday brought with it not only the joyful anticipation of the wedding, but also a burden of secrets that was about to fall on the unsuspecting groom. Sophia knew that she had a few hours before the ceremony to find the strength to destroy the happiness of the man she loved more than life itself. Saturday, 6:30 a.m., wedding day. Sophia woke up at dawn after a sleepless night. Gray light filtered through the curtains of her apartment, illuminating the wedding dress that hung on the closet door like a white ghost of unfulfilled dreams. In 5 hours, she was supposed to walk down the aisle, but instead of the joyful excitement of a bride, a heavy emptiness settled in her chest. She got out of bed and walked to the window. Millbrook was waking up. Early buses were taking workers to factories, lights were coming on in cafes, and the city was starting another ordinary day. For everyone, except Sophia. The bathroom mirror reflected a pale face with dark circles under her eyes. Sophia tried to imagine what she would look like in a few hours, in a wedding dress, with a bouquet in her hands, smiling next to Aaron. But the picture didn't come together. Instead, she saw the horror in her fiancé's eyes when he learned the truth. Her phone vibrated on the bedside table. A message from Aaron. "Good morning, my future wife. Today is the happiest day of our lives. I love you." Sophia read the message and cried. His boundless love and trust made the impending confession even more painful. But Martha was right. Aaron deserved to know the truth about the woman he was about to marry. At 8 a.m., Sophia dialed Aaron's number. "I need to see you. Right now. It's very important." "Sophia, what's wrong? You know that the groom isn't supposed to see the bride on the wedding day before the ceremony. Forget about superstitions. Please, Aaron, come over." Something in her voice made him agree. Half an hour later, Aaron was standing at the door of her apartment. He was excited and happy, despite the early hour and the strange call. He was holding a bouquet of white roses. "I couldn't resist bringing flowers to my bride on her wedding day." Sophia looked at him, tall, handsome, radiating love and joy. The man she was about to destroy. "Aaron, we need to talk. Please sit down." He sat down on the sofa, still smiling, but with a look of caution in his eyes. "Sophia, you look terrible. What's going on?" Sophia sat down opposite him, clenched her hands into fists, and forced herself to begin. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything. You may want to call off the wedding." Aaron leaned forward, the smile disappearing from his face. "What are you talking about?" "About the baby I'm carrying. About who the father might be." A long pause. Aaron looked at her, not understanding. "What do you mean?" "I'm the father. You and I. 3 months ago, after the company party. I was drunk. I was alone with your father in the office." Sophia closed her eyes. Something happened between us. The silence was deafening. Aaron sat motionless, as if he didn't quite understand what he had heard. "What happened?" His voice became quieter. "We slept together. Once. It was a huge mistake. I regret it every day, but..." Aaron jumped up from the sofa so abruptly that the table with the flowers tipped over. "You slept with my father?" Sophia nodded, unable to say it out loud again. "And the baby could be his?" Another nod. Aaron stood in the middle of the room, breathing heavily. His face reflected shock, incomprehension, and then slowly mounting rage. 3 months. You knew for 3 months and kept quiet. Aaron, I wanted to tell you. Kept quiet. You planned the wedding, accepted my gifts, let me dream about our child. His voice grew louder. And yesterday at rehearsal, when you told me you were pregnant, you knew. I wasn't sure. Not sure. Aaron laughed bitterly. You slept with my father and you weren't sure who you were pregnant with? Sophia started to cry. I'm sorry, Aaron. I didn't want this to happen. I love you. You love me? He moved closer, and Sophia saw something frightening in his eyes. If you loved me, how could you sleep with my father? I was drunk. He took advantage of me. Don't blame him. You made a choice. You chose to sleep with him, and then you chose to lie to me. Aaron paced the room like a caged animal. Sophia had never seen him like this before. His face red with rage, his hands clenched into fists, his eyes burning with anger. All these months, all our plans, it was all a lie. No, my feelings for you are real. Real? Aaron stopped in front of her. You were going to marry me, knowing you could be carrying my father's child. Sophia tried to explain, but her words got tangled up. She said it was a mistake, that she regretted it, that she wanted to be with him no matter what. But Aaron wasn't listening anymore. One thought ran through his head. The woman he loved more than life itself had betrayed him in the most cruel way possible. At 10:30 a.m., they finally drove to the church. Sophia begged him to call off the wedding, but Aaron was adamant. He said he needed to think, that they needed to talk to their parents, that they shouldn't make any rash decisions. But something in his tone made Sophia agree. St. Michael's Church was decorated with white flowers and ribbons. Guests had already begun to gather, relatives, friends, colleagues. Everyone was looking forward to a beautiful wedding ceremony, unaware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes. Sophia was getting dressed in a separate room at the church. The wedding dress fit perfectly. The veil framed her face beautifully, but in the mirror, she saw not a happy bride, but a woman walking to her execution. In the men's dressing room, Aaron was putting on his tuxedo. His best friend and best man, Mike, tried to cheer him up, but Aaron responded with monosyllables. Inside, a storm of emotions raged within him. Pain, anger, and a sense of betrayal mixed into a toxic cocktail. At 11:30, the guests took their seats in the church. The Millers sat in the front rows. Baxter looked tense, Martha cold and distant. There was a palpable rift between them, formed after yesterday's conversation. The ceremony began. The organist played the wedding march, and Sophia walked down the aisle toward the altar. The guests turned to admire the beautiful bride, but Sophia saw only Aaron standing at the altar. The groom's face was stony. He looked at her, and there was no love or joy in his gaze, only cold determination. The pastor began the ceremony with the traditional words about marriage as a union of two hearts. Sophia stood next to Aaron, holding his hand and feeling him tremble with restrained emotions. If anyone here knows of a reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. A usual formality that no one takes seriously. But at that moment, Aaron turned to Sophia. Tell them, he whispered so quietly that only she could hear. Aaron, please, tell everyone the truth. Now, his voice was barely audible, but it was steely. Sophia realized she had no choice. I can't get married, she said louder so everyone could hear. A dead silence fell over the church. The guests looked at each other, not understanding what was happening. The pastor looked puzzled. Sophia, what's wrong? He asked gently. Sophia looked at Aaron, then at Baxter in the front row. Her father-in-law's face was pale as chalk. I was unfaithful to Aaron. I slept with another man, and now I'm pregnant. I don't know who the father is. A wave of astonishment swept through the church. The guests began to whisper among themselves. Some gasped, some stood up. "Who?" Aaron asked loudly so that everyone could hear. Sophia remained silent, but Aaron was not going to stop. "Tell them who you slept with." "Aaron, please." "Tell them!" The cry echoed through the church. In the ensuing silence, only Aaron's heavy breathing could be heard. "With your father," whispered Sophia. If the previous confession had caused shock, these words led to an explosion. Guests jumped up from their seats, shouted, and some women cried. Martha Miller covered her face with her hands. Baxter tried to stand up, but his legs wouldn't hold him. Aaron stood motionless in the midst of this chaos. Then he slowly turned to his father. "Is it true?" Baxter didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. What happened next happened very quickly. Aaron grabbed Sophia by the shoulders. At first, he just held her, looked into her eyes, and Sophia saw the madness in them. Then his hands moved to her neck. "You ruined my life," he whispered. "Aaron, don't." But it was too late. The rage that had been building up for hours burst out. Aaron clasped his hands around Sophia's throat and began to choke her. Everything happened in slow motion. The guests screamed, someone tried to intervene, but Aaron was a strong man, and his rage gave him extra strength. Sophia tried to break free, but her wedding dress restricted her movements. Baxter rushed to the altar, but it was too late. Sophia fell onto the marble steps of the altar, her neck broken. The white dress spread around her body like flower petals. Aaron stood over her, breathing heavily, not fully understanding what had happened. His hands were still shaking with rage, but his eyes showed the realization of what he had done. The church was in chaos. Women were screaming. Men were trying to help Sophia. Someone was calling an ambulance and the police. The pastor stood at the altar in shock, unable to believe what had just happened in the house of God. Martha Miller sobbed in her sister's arms. Baxter knelt next to Sophia's body, repeating, "No, no, no," like a mantra. But Sophia was no longer breathing. Aaron did not resist when the arriving police officers handcuffed him. He stared at the body of his former fiancée with the empty eyes of a man who had just lost everything: love, future, his very soul. "She betrayed me," he told Detective Tom Brown, who was one of the first to arrive. "She slept with my father and was going to marry me." Detective Brown had seen many crimes in his career, but murder at the altar during a wedding ceremony was new even to him. He looked at the young man in the blood-stained tuxedo and knew that this case would haunt him for a long time. The church was cordoned off with yellow tape. Forensic investigators photographed the crime scene, interviewed witnesses, and collected evidence. Wedding flowers were mixed with police markers, white ribbons with yellow barrier tape. Sophia Clark was dead at the age of 24, on what should have been the happiest day of her life. The child she was carrying was never born. The mystery of its paternity died with her. Aaron Miller was arrested on charges of first-degree murder. He was taken away in handcuffs, and St. Michael's Church became forever associated with one of the most shocking tragedies in Millbrook's history. News of the wedding murder spread through the town like wildfire. By evening, a crowd of onlookers had gathered near the church. Journalists were interviewing shocked guests, and local television stations were interrupting their programs with breaking news reports. The Miller family was destroyed in a single day. Martha filed for divorce before the police had even finished examining the crime scene. Baxter was left alone, realizing that his actions had led to the death of an innocent girl and the destruction of his own son's life. In his prison cell, Aaron Miller sat on a narrow cot and tried to understand how his life had turned into a nightmare in just a few hours. In the morning, he was a happy groom preparing for his wedding. In the evening, he was a murderer who had taken the life of the woman he once loved more than anything else in the world. Monday, 9 a.m., Millbrook Police Station. Detective Tom Brown sat in his office, studying the case file on the murder of Sophia Clark. In his 30 years on the force, he had seen many crimes, but this case stood out for its particular brutality and publicity. The murder had taken place in front of 50 witnesses in a church during a wedding ceremony. On the table lay photographs from the crime scene, witness statements, and autopsy results. The facts were clear. Aaron Miller had strangled his fiancée with his own hands. But the motives and circumstances that led to the tragedy required careful examination. Brown began with the medical report. The pathologist confirmed that Sophia Clark's cause of death was a fracture of the cervical vertebrae resulting from compression of the throat. The time of death was 11:47 a.m. on Saturday. No alcohol or drugs were found in the victim's blood. Her pregnancy was confirmed. She was 11 weeks along. The most important aspect of the investigation was establishing a motive. Witness testimony unanimously confirmed that the murder occurred immediately after Sophia confessed to having a relationship with her fiancé's father. Brown summoned Martha Miller for questioning. The woman looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, trembling hands, a barely audible voice. In 2 days, she had lost her daughter-in-law, her son had become a murderer, and her husband had turned out to be unfaithful. Martha told him about her suspicions of Baxter's infidelity, about the check she found for a bracelet for Sophia, about her conversation with the girl in the restaurant's ladies' room. She confirmed that she had given Sophia an ultimatum: tell Aaron the truth, or she would do it herself. "I thought I was doing the right thing," Martha said, wiping away her tears. "Aaron deserved to know the truth, but I never thought it would lead to this." Next was the interrogation of Baxter Miller. The 52-year-old man had aged years in just a few days. His gray hair had become more noticeable, his shoulders had slumped, and his eyes had the emptiness of a man who had lost everything. Baxter did not deny his relationship with Sophia. He recounted how it happened in February after a corporate party, the subsequent meetings, and how he found out about the girl's pregnancy. His testimony confirmed the version that either he or Aaron could be the father of the child. "It was a mistake," Baxter repeated. "A huge mistake that ruined several people's lives." "I never wanted Sophia to get hurt," Brown asked about the bracelet Baxter had bought for Sophia. The man admitted that he wanted to convince the girl to start a relationship with him, despite her upcoming wedding to Aaron. He understood the insanity of his plan, but he was willing to destroy his family for the sake of a relationship with the young woman. The key moment in the investigation was the interrogation of Aaron Miller himself. The young man was being held in the county jail awaiting trial. His lawyer insisted on pleading insanity, but Aaron was against it. Sitting in the interrogation room, Aaron looked like a broken man. He was physically unharmed, but the psychological damage was enormous. He methodically recounted the events of Saturday morning, how Sophia confessed to him about her relationship with his father and his feelings at that moment. "I loved her more than life itself," Aaron said in a monotone voice. "I planned to spend my whole life with her, to raise our children. And she slept with my father and was going to marry me, hiding it." Brown tried to understand what exactly had pushed Aaron to commit murder. Was it planned revenge or a spontaneous outburst of rage? Aaron explained that the decision to force Sophia to confess publicly came to him on the way to church. He wanted everyone to know the truth, so that his family and friends would understand what kind of person was about to become part of their lives. But when Sophia uttered the words about her relationship with Baxter, something snapped in Aaron's mind. "I didn't plan to kill her," he repeated. "I just lost control." All those months of lies, the betrayal of the people closest to me, it was too much. A psychological evaluation conducted at the court's request showed that Aaron was in a state of affect at the time of the crime. However, the experts found him sane and capable of being held responsible for his actions. Brown also interviewed numerous witnesses, wedding guests who had seen the murder. Their testimonies were unanimous. Aaron had strangled Sophia immediately after she confessed to having an affair with his father. No one doubted that it was a crime of passion, not a premeditated murder. One of the key witnesses was the pastor of St. Michael's Church, Father William Mackenzie. The elderly priest was so shaken by what had happened that he was unable to conduct services for several days. He described how the atmosphere in the church changed the moment Sophia made her confession, how quickly the joyful ceremony turned into a nightmare. "In 40 years of ministry, I have seen many human dramas," Father Mackenzie said. "But for a murder to take place in the house of God, at the altar, has shaken my faith in human nature." The investigation also included a review of the Miller family's financial records. Brown discovered that Baxter had spent significant amounts on gifts for Sophia, including not only the bracelet, but also other jewelry, flowers, and dinners at expensive restaurants. This confirmed the seriousness of his intentions regarding his relationship with his future daughter-in-law. An interesting point was the reaction of Sophia's colleagues at the Fresh Mart supermarket. Many noted that in recent months, the girl had been nervous, often receiving mysterious phone calls, and sometimes leaving work under strange pretexts. Sophia's friend, Linda, recalled that she had mentioned a difficult situation several times, but never went into details. A week after the murder, Brown received the DNA test results. Medical experts were able to determine the paternity of the fetus Sophia was carrying. The result was unexpected even for an experienced detective. The father of the child was Aaron, not Baxter. This information radically changed the picture of what had happened. Sophia had been killed because of suspicions of infidelity, but the child she was carrying was from the very man who had killed her. The irony of fate was cruel. Brown decided not to tell Aaron this information until the trial. Psychologists warned that knowing he had killed the mother of his child could completely break the young man's psyche. The Sophia Clark case became a sensation not only in Millbrook, but far beyond. The media called it a death wedding and an altar murder. Journalists from all over the country came to the city, trying to get exclusive interviews with those involved in the tragedy. St. Michael's Church was closed for several weeks for repairs and consecration. Many parishioners said they could no longer attend the church after what had happened there. The Miller Sons construction company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Clients were terminating contracts, unwilling to do business with a family involved in such a scandal. Baxter was forced to sell most of his assets to cover debts and pay for his son's lawyers. Martha Miller filed for divorce and moved to another state to live with her sister. She couldn't stay in a town where everyone knew her as the mother of a murderer and the wife of a traitor. Aaron Miller's trial began 3 months after the murder. The case was handled by District Attorney James Patterson, known for his uncompromising attitude toward criminals. Aaron was defended by experienced attorney Sarah Goldman, who specialized in cases involving crimes of passion. The trial lasted 2 weeks and attracted enormous public attention. The courtroom was packed with journalists and onlookers. Many Millbrook residents came to hear the details of the drama that had shaken their town. The prosecutor insisted on a first-degree murder charge, arguing that Aaron had planned the murder in advance. As evidence, he cited the fact that the defendant had forced Sophia to publicly confess to her infidelity, thus creating a motive for the killing. The defense objected, arguing that Aaron had acted in a state of temporary insanity caused by the shock of betrayal by those closest to him. Goldman presented testimony from psychologists who confirmed that Aaron had been in a state of acute psychological stress. The key moment in the trial was the testimony of Baxter Miller. The killer's father was forced to publicly recount his relationship with Sophia, how he seduced her, and subsequently tried to persuade her to continue the relationship. "I ruined my own son's life with my actions," Baxter confessed in court. "If I hadn't touched Sophia, she would be alive, and Aaron would be a happy husband and father." These words made a strong impression on the jury. Many saw Aaron not just as a murderer, but as a victim of betrayal by his father and fiancée. The moment the DNA test results were announced was a turning point in the trial. When it became known that Sophia's child was Aaron's and not Baxter's, the atmosphere in the courtroom changed. The defendant learned that he had killed the mother of his own child, and this finally broke him. Aaron collapsed in the courtroom upon hearing the news. Doctors were forced to assist him, and the trial was interrupted for several days. After the hearings resumed, the defense changed its strategy, emphasizing that Aaron had not only lost the woman he loved because of her betrayal, but had also killed the mother of his unborn child without knowing it. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The verdict was a compromise. Aaron Miller was found guilty of second-degree manslaughter. The court took into account the circumstances of the case, the state of affect, and the fact that the defendant himself had been the victim of betrayal. The sentence was 15 years imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 10 years for good behavior. Aaron listened to the verdict standing, without emotion. He had become a shadow of his former self, thin, graying at 27, with the empty eyes of a man who had lost everything. After the trial, Brown closed the Sophia Clark case. It remained in his archives as one of the most tragic stories. A story of how family secrets and human weaknesses led to the destruction of several lives at once. 2 years had passed since the tragedy. Millbrook was gradually forgetting about the wedding murder, although the story was still being passed from mouth to mouth as a warning about what lies and betrayal can lead to. Aaron Miller was serving his sentence in a maximum security prison. He participated in rehabilitation programs, earned a college degree through correspondence courses, and helped out in the prison library. Psychologists noted his stable condition, but he never fully recovered. Baxter Miller left Millbrook and moved to a small town in another state. He worked as a simple carpenter, living in a modest apartment and avoiding any contact with his past life. His divorce from Martha was finalized in absentia. Martha started a new life under her maiden name. She worked at a medical center in another city and told no one about her past. She sometimes received letters from Aaron in prison, but she did not respond to them. St. Michael's Church was restored and reconsecrated. Father Mackenzie retired, unable to forget what had happened at the altar of his church. The new pastor never heard the full story, but noticed that the elderly parishioners avoided the front rows where the tragedy had once taken place. The story of Sophia Clark and Aaron Miller became part of American crime history, a tragic example of how family secrets can lead to irreversible consequences. In the Millbrook Police Archives, it was listed as Case Number 2025-0847, Murder at the Altar. But for those who knew the people involved personally, it was much more than that. It was a story of ruined lives and unfulfilled hopes.